Coming up, Digg.com's big relaunch. Yelp and LinkedIn are winning, and Maily for email and kids. All that and the mystery of the missing iPhone. We'll tell you more up next on The Social Hour.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for the Social Hour is brought to you by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is The Social Hour with Sarah Lane and Amber MacArthur, episode 71, recorded August 3rd, 2012. This episode of The Social Hour is brought to you by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website or blog. Plus, more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs with automatic device scaling. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code SOCIALHOUR8. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Social Hour from Petaluma, California. I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Amber MacArthur from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Hello, Sarah. How are you doing?
Hello, Amber. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I am doing great. It is a pretty muggy day in Toronto, but other than that, it's I can't complain. Been a busy week for me at work, and of course, lots of social media news. Like I said last week, Friday has become a really great day to do the show because there's so much content. I could have filled out an entire new rundown for another show. Just seems to be a lot going on if you wait till the end of the week. So all good for this.
Yes. We have switched our times, about a month strong now. Amber and I are now shooting live on Fridays at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, which has, at least for us, felt really good so far. So if you're not watching us live, that would be a good time to tune in next time. And although I think next week we're going to shoot it at a different time, but we'll make that official on the TWiT calendar if that goes through. But if you're not watching us live, welcome. Thanks for watching whenever is convenient for you. So, Amber, as you mentioned, there's a ton of social stuff to talk about. There always is. But, yeah, Friday is sort of the plethora. You can just sort of like, it's like rain, you know, you just hold out your hat and it just fills up.
And there's
with
a
water.
ton of stories. Yeah, I mean, so much going on. I know we've been following the Digg story for a while on the Social Hour as far as the new Digg site, and it recently launched. I know you added this to the rundown. I've been poking around the site a little bit. Curious about what you think of it, Sarah. I have my own opinions, but I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, so a couple days ago, Digg.com launched, as promised. The company BetaWorks had picked up the website and Twitter followers and all of that stuff. And as promised, they launched. It looks completely different than any Digg that you would have seen before or used before. I know Jenny Jardin said that the new Digg logo looked just like Boing Boing's, and she was a little bit annoyed about that. But to me, it just kind of looks like the Digg logo that I remember. But yeah, Amber, it's a much more visual, I think, representation of top stories as submitted by users. So the focus of Digg is the same, but the layout is different. I mean, we've got clearly some curation going on. Somebody has decided that the Who Has All the Drones story, very popular, is going to be sort of front and center. We've got another story about EA suing Zynga. We've got a little bit of like a money story about super PACs. And then a terrible story that I had to click on and read because it was about Taco Bell employee behaving badly. And as you scroll down the page, I do feel like, in general, based on all of the news that I looked at today, it seems like a pretty good representation of top stories and news that one would find interesting and relevant based on the fact that, it's getting a lot of buzz. As the old Digg was set up, we've got a popular area. So down under top stories, you've got some stories that are coming up in the world. Speaking of moving fast, Cheetah filmed breaking a speed record. Cheetah wasn't actually filming anything because cheetahs don't do that. Something about Mitt Romney. Mark Zuckerberg lost $423 million yesterday. Well, that blows. And then another tab is the upcoming tab. So again, these are stories that are kind of on the rise. And I'm already logged in via Facebook, which was my only option, by the way. That's going to annoy some people, but I don't have a huge problem with it, at least just to try something out. So I can go ahead and dig that Americans want to know more about their genetic code, because that was a good story. I can also, over to the right-hand side, of the Digg button, go ahead and save the story to my phone. Digg actually has a standalone iPhone app. Does not appear to have anything for any other mobile OS at this moment, although I'm sure they're furiously working on something. So that it's almost like a way to bookmark a bunch of stories that you're just not going to read right now. Certainly not if you're in the upcoming section, because there's just a bunch of headlines that you want to follow up on later. And particularly if you're on the go, that'd be a good time to get through some stuff if you've got some free time waiting in line or commuting, as long as you're not driving on your phone. So, Amber, I'm pretty bullish on the way that Digg looks so far, and what seems to be their rollout.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm happy just to have another source to go to for news and information about what's happening in technology and social media news, because I find sometimes, as much as I go to Mashable and I love it, there are so many great stories that are always listed there. I feel as though many times it can be sort of the same type of stories. So it's nice to have a different option. So I've always gone to 3 or 4 main sites every morning when I wake up to find out what's happening in social and news in the technology space. And I used to love going to Digg. So I think it'll give me a reason to kind of come back to Digg, because like you said, the design is nice. It's really clean. It's much more visual than it was before. And I think the whole user experience is that much better. I think for even a mainstream audience who wants to come in and dive through some content, it seems as though they've taken some of the focus away from the user community on Digg and put more of the focus on the content, which, I think some people will appreciate that. So some good stories. I found some neat stuff there I hadn't read on some of the other blogs. So if they can keep it up, I think, they could have a long future in front of them.
Yeah, they also, you mentioned less emphasis on kind of the community, and that's, you don't have comments on these stories. So I can go in and read pretty much everything that Digg's got to offer, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's a very different experience than Digg used to be. I mean, Digg was sort of known for derailing, troll, crazy comments that would end up, there would be flame wars within comments, and that's the sort of thing that we deal with on YouTube and variety of other sites. YouTube is just particularly bad. But I don't miss them on Digg. I mean, I feel kind of like if you've got a robust community that isn't being moderated, which was the whole point of Digg, even though you could argue that it was being moderated to some extent, things just always sort of end up going lowest common denominator. If you take that away, it makes my experience much more fun, because all I really want to do is read these stories. I guess if I saw that somebody was submitting a bunch of really good stories on a regular basis, I might want to connect with them or give them kudos, but I don't necessarily need to read all of the comments from people who thought that those stories were sucky or something else.
Or more inappropriate words, more likely.
Yes, exactly.
That is probably the case. Now, in other news, we also have a link about YouTube and YouTube channels. It looks as though they plan to pour about $200 million more into promoting these different channels on YouTube. We've talked about this story before with their experiment. Initially, they had put about $150 million into some of these channels, basically seeding these different video shows that are being developed on YouTube and running it almost like a mini TV network with a really major marketing budget.
Yeah, exactly. This Wall Street Journal article goes into some of the details from some of the content creators. And, it's not as if YouTube said this $150 million experiment was such a success. Everybody's doing so well. We can't stop making money. We're just going to grow. It sounds like, depending on the show, as is the case on television, on the web, on YouTube, I mean, it's always the same, is that sometimes a show clicks, sometimes it doesn't. And often when it doesn't, it's not because it's not a good idea, it just needs to be retooled. And particularly the YouTube audience is a particular kind of audience that the better you know what they want, the more that you can make content that's not only smart and funny and engaging and all of that stuff, but keeps their attention, because they obviously have so much content to choose from. They've launched almost 100 new channels this year. These are obviously official YouTube channels. Attracted Hollywood talent. YouTube says that they've received commitments on $150 million of ads on the channels this year. This is according to a person with direct knowledge of the sales who spoke to the Wall Street Journal. So, YouTube is in this not just because they want to be associated with good content, but of course they want big advertisers to spend big budgets on programming that is actually attracting a lot of people. And there are those YouTube stars that do well. There are not that many of them, at least not that are household names. But you get Amy Poehler to do a show on YouTube, and she brings over her audience. She obviously has a big audience. She's very talented. It's like YouTube. I like how the lines continue to blur between, where do you get good content? YouTube, wanting to spend money making stuff that is as high quality as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting quotes in this article in the Wall Street Journal was from one of the executives at YouTube who talked about the success of some of the channels, saying that among the new channels, 10 of them average more than 1 million video views per week. I mean, that's significant. Sarah, you, like me, have worked in TV in the past and know that having 1 million views in a week, if it's one show or one program or a bunch of different shows, whatever it might be, that those are pretty healthy numbers to be able to attract that many people, especially with so much content at people's fingertips in terms of different choice of what they can be watching. So it's pretty impressive and good to see them doing well with it. I don't watch a lot of YouTube content. I kind of poke in here and there, but I guess I'm watching more Netflix and shows that are a little more produced, perhaps. But obviously, a lot of viewers are opting for YouTube as a first choice.
Yeah, I'm with you. There are a lot of these shows that I read about, or maybe I've seen a clip somewhere else, and I think, gosh, that looks pretty good. But there was a award show that the TNT team went to because we got the Best News podcast, which was really fun. But there were a lot of other shows that were winning various awards, and it's like, I didn't know most of those shows, and I felt kind of silly, like, this is my community, and I don't know. I assume that they're here because they put good stuff together, but it can be kind of hard to follow all of this on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I think, the thing is, I've always thought at some point, well, maybe the YouTube community at one point was my community too. But then I think it really hasn't been in many ways. I haven't really nurtured that community at all. And in fact, from the people that I know who have done really well with the YouTube community, it seems like they're a pretty tight group. And I feel like the podcasting community is almost separate to the YouTube community in some ways. Mm-hmm. And people on YouTube just, they went at it creating content there. They, the commenting system and being part of that experience, supporting each other, all happening within YouTube. They sort of live and breathe YouTube. And I think in some respects the same can be said for people who started in the early days of podcasting. But I do think it's kind of a different community. That's just been my experience watching it grow over the past few years.
I agree. And there are certainly, it's a generalization, but there is a lot of YouTube kind of like, it's a recreation of what we know traditional programming to be. That's more like official stuff. That's not just, me with my webcam putting up a YouTube video. It's not like traditional programming at all. But I do know what you mean. Podcast a little bit more of that kind of grassroots, starting from scratch type of feel. YouTube is a little bit of like anything goes. It's also, I also think it's not hard to do, but it is somewhat time consuming, and it takes a little bit of, I guess, determination to put together your YouTube experience. So, I've got an account. I like videos here and there. I subscribe to, the TWiT feed, for example, because it's easy for me to pull up videos, and a few other people too. But I don't subscribe to all the content that I would like to watch. I just haven't yet. So there's a little bit of like an organizational element, so that I think YouTube seems like the Wild West until you can actually log in and watch the stuff that you want to watch. If you follow iJustine, she puts out a new video, it's going to be right there in your new area, and you can keep up on what she's doing. But if not, then you kind of forget to check back, and I guess it's a lot like podcasts, really. Same idea.
But even I think with podcasts, even within, if you go into the iTunes store, for example, going to podcasts, you'll find that generally speaking, at this point, I think most of the podcasts that are on the top of the list are fairly well produced. But I think you're right. I love talking about the term Wild West, because YouTube is still a little bit like that. Unless you go in and you kind of nurture your community or build up the shows that you like you mentioned, I think you end up finding, there's a lot of junk in there, right? Mm-hmm. That you never would want to watch. And then sometimes I get lazy and I'd rather just go to another service like Netflix and know that most of the content in there is reasonably professional. So great for these guys who are creating content there. I'm sure there's a lot of happy people, and it's good news, I think, for all of us that it's been such a success, particularly with the advertising, if those numbers are true too.
Exactly. Some other good news in the social world. Two companies, very social ones indeed, have posted good numbers for this latest quarter. The last couple of weeks have been full of earnings reports. Anybody who watches TNT knows that we've been covering them quite to death. LinkedIn and Yelp this week both posted pretty good earnings reports. Good numbers, user engagement is up, revenues are up. And this is actually in contrast to some of the other companies who did not post. Well, Facebook met its analyst expectations, but not to the point where anybody was very impressed. Zynga was dismal. Who else? Who else did badly? Apple iPhone sales were down. So in general, the outlook looks a little bit bleak, for the second half of 2012. But then you looked at something like LinkedIn and then a service like Yelp, both of which I use very regularly. They're kind of, on the up and up. Amber, do you think there's anything about, I guess we could start with LinkedIn. LinkedIn had, they had Twitter pull its API from LinkedIn recently because, well, I don't know. We didn't really get that much of an official statement on it, but people can no longer just send their tweets to their LinkedIn profiles. Doesn't really seem to be, I don't really even notice the difference. But they also had a big security breach earlier this year, and a lot of people's information got compromised, and that's usually really bad for goodwill with your user base. But despite that, things are looking pretty rosy for LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, pretty healthy, especially reporting a profit this time around of, $2.8 million. And I think if you go back maybe 10 episodes of the Social Hour, Sarah, we started to talk a little bit more about LinkedIn and talk about some of the innovative features on LinkedIn. And although they've had, a couple of snafus here and there, the reality is, and I've been saying this for a while, they feel like they're the one social network that's really smart about their strategy. They know what audience that they cater to. They understand how to nurture that audience, and they understand how to innovate. They've bought some apps, so they've built some of their own apps, but they've done it all slowly and they've done it carefully. And you just get the feeling they're thinking about their next move all of the time. It's so funny because I knew we were going to talk about this, Sarah, and so I was trying to come up with an interesting analogy and equate Facebook and LinkedIn to maybe Hollywood celebrities, but I don't watch that much celebrity gossip, so I was having a hard time. But I was thinking of Facebook as like Lindsay Lohan. It's kind of a train wreck here and there, right? And LinkedIn is maybe like Harrison Ford in some ways, in terms of it being like, the solid actor who just kept coming back kind of remained low key. But as far as earnings go, definitely a longer term career in front of him and behind him as well. So LinkedIn, Harrison Ford, I don't know. I think that they're going to continue to shine, and they just keep doing a lot of things right.
I wonder if Harrison Ford has a LinkedIn profile. Something tells me he's too cool for that. Like, if you don't know what I've done in my career, then I don't want to talk to you anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but there are hardly any celebrities on LinkedIn really that I can think of, right? It's just, it's mostly the business audience, which is maybe that's helped them as well. It's kind of squeaky clean, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like there really is no reason to be on LinkedIn unless you are connecting professionally. I'm sure there are people who are using it kind of in a social or a dating or some other way, but LinkedIn is for keeping my resume up to date. That is my only resume copy is on LinkedIn, and has been for years. Connecting with people that I either have met through work or am trying to reconnect with that I've known in the past. I enjoy when you give somebody a recommendation. I enjoy, every once in a while somebody will be between jobs, they're leaving a job and they're going to get a new one, and they'll ask me to endorse them if I've worked with them in the past. And that's all very positive stuff to me.
It sure is.
That's that good working environment that makes you want to treat your coworkers well, because it really does matter who you know and how you've been as an employee and a boss, and LinkedIn is really squeaky clean in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like as if you leave your company, all of a sudden there's a breakup message that goes out to your community saying, Amber has just broken up with TWiT and the relationship is over, or, it doesn't have that quality to it. So it's always remained, I think, really professional. Now, the only thing that bugs me, Sarah, I wanted to ask you about this too, as well as people who are listening in the chat room, or for people who are listening, if they're downloading the show. One thing that bugs me about LinkedIn is I know that you can pay for a pro account and then you're able to see who's viewed your profile, if I'm correct. I am not a huge fan of that feature. As a user, I guess I like it, seeing who's viewed my profile, but it makes me scared to go in and kind of poke around and be looking at a lot of people's different information and profile they put out there, because it just feels a little stalkish. I don't know. That's just me, but I think that's how that works.
Yeah, that's not good. I don't like that to be a feature ever. I mean, I don't even really like that on Evites. I know Evite is still around. Yeah. I haven't gotten one in a while, but it's like, I didn't actually realize until I made my first Evite, because I had just, accepted or declined or whatever other people's Evites, that I could see whether or not somebody had said that they were coming to my party or not. When was the last time that they looked at the invitation? Because a lot of times you go once and you say, not enough people have said that they're going, I'm just going to hold off. And then you go again, and it's like the party organizer sees that you visited and not said that you're going to their party 5 times. And that kind of stuff just makes me feel uncomfortable, because there's certain behaviors that we do. You can call it stalking, but it's just like we all do stuff that might be taken a certain way, but that's just sort of human behavior in a private sense, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I need to look into it, and I might actually pay to get a pro account just to understand a little bit more about how it works. But I think it's also that feeling of, if someone ever emails you and say, hey, I know you've been poking around my account. Are you interested in possibly going out for coffee or networking? I mean, you're right. I think the best thing about the web at times is it allows people to be a little more voyeuristic without the risk of everybody knowing. And I think on LinkedIn, if you're searching for people to hire, you want to kind of poke around. And so I'll try to report back next week in terms of the pro account and some of the advantages and maybe disadvantages. But other than that, I think really strong, healthy future for LinkedIn.
Me too. Moving on to Yelp, who also had a good quarter. They beat the street, which is funny, because what Yelp actually did was narrow their losses, which sometimes you think, but they still lost money, so how is that good? Well, if they lost less money than they were forecasting, a lot of times this makes investors really happy. They pulled in $32.7 million in revenue. They had a $2 million net loss, which is less loss than previous quarters. Amber, I talked about Yelp on the second episode of i5 for the iPhone, which is one of our new shows on TWiT, in form of the iPhone app, because that's what we do on that show. But my general thing was, Yelp sometimes to me seems like a service that wants to be a little bit too many things. They have a check-in functionality that is very Foursquare-esque that I don't use, because I don't know. I already have services that I do that with. That has never seemed like a very helpful thing to me, but a lot of other people use it. But for me, not only is it a way to just kind of get a read on a restaurant that I might be thinking of trying out, or even a doctor or a hairstylist or that sort of thing, but also the iPhone app specifically is great because it will give me that sort of information geolocated to wherever I am. So if I'm in an unfamiliar neighborhood, or I just want a sandwich, or there's certain things that I want, it'll give me really good information based on where I am. So Yelp has been like a slam dunk to me for years. And there are people who hate Yelp because they say, Yelpers, people who leave Yelp reviews, are kind of like crazy, and they're over the top, and they're so picky. And it's true. I mean, sometimes you'll get a Yelp review that's several paragraphs, and you read it and you go, okay, this person really didn't like those biscuits. Got it. Maybe you just had a bad day or something. But for the most part, I would prefer to read things like that from people who really care than people who don't.
Yeah, and I think one thing Yelp has been amazing at is, especially at a community level, and I notice it in my neighborhood in Toronto, is that I'll go to little cafes and they'll have the Yelp sticker outside if they've been recommended on Yelp and have had good reviews. So I think they've been really good. You know, we mentioned before about that term, just grassroots. They've been great at being able to get people on the ground participating and providing reviews and recommendations, and then connecting with business owners to talk to them about the importance of something like Yelp. So it's great to see them continue to do well. I think that's another one that'll be here for a while.
Absolutely.
Facebook, I don't know. Facebook, the jury's out for me still.
Yeah, isn't that weird that we're having the conversation? I was thinking about this. It's like, even a year ago, things felt so different for Facebook. And I'm not saying that Facebook was perfect a year ago, because people hated Facebook a year ago, that's for sure. It's bigger than ever. It is now a publicly traded company. And it's like the tide is turning on Facebook really quickly. And maybe not everybody feels that way. I read a lot of tech news for my job, so it's like I'm reading, courtroom drama about Facebook that really doesn't affect anybody personally, as a consumer. So maybe some of that stuff is skewing the way that I feel about Facebook. But it's like Facebook can't do anything right these days. The revenues aren't good enough. People don't believe that it's going to succeed advertising via mobile, which is how a lot of people are accessing Facebook now. And I don't know. It's weird that Yelp is like, yeah, Yelp is doing really well. Go Yelp. You've been around a while. And Facebook is like, we're having a conversation like, I don't know if it's got the chops.
I hate to say this because there's so many benefits still to using Facebook as individuals and as businesses, but I still wonder if we'll look back at Facebook and think that it had peaked when they came out with the movie, The Social Network. I think about that timing as being like the peak, right? And I don't think of a lot of upside since then. However, they're obviously going to be around for a while. It just doesn't feel as, the future of Facebook doesn't feel as solid to me as maybe a LinkedIn, for example. But plenty of people disagree with me, Sarah. I don't know if you have the same experience, but again, we'll just keep an eye on it. We talk about it every show, and I know later on in the show we're going to talk a little bit about Facebook and some new stuff as well. Well,
since we're talking about Facebook, maybe we should just get into the social tip that maybe will make Facebook seem, I don't know, less like it's headed for disaster. I don't know, Amber. What do you say we shake up this rundown a little bit since we're on the topic of Facebook already?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
This is the social tip, which is this is actually a feature that is not live. It certainly isn't live for me. It's possible that it's rolled up to you already. But I haven't heard anybody actually say that they've seen it. This is a functionality that Facebook's rolling out called Save for Later. The idea behind that is okay, let's say you fire up your news feed. You're just going to kind of see what's going on. People are sharing pictures of family picnics, links to articles that they read, a political poll that, may or may not, enrage you. I mean, there are all sorts of things on that news feed. And chances are you look at very few of them. You're kind of scanning, and it goes by so quickly that most of the stuff that you see, even if it seems interesting, if you don't have time right then, it's kind of gone forever. So the whole Save for Later feature is Facebook's attempt to kind of give you an Instapaper within Facebook so that you can hover over, I think it's kind of like click and hold over a story. And the screenshots that are up on an article on The Verge talking about this are via the mobile app. Obviously, this is not the web version, but I think it was imore.com says that it's also coming to their web version. So this would be a feature across the board on Facebook, mobile and web, so that you can pretty much bookmark stuff that your friends are sharing to come back to you later. I think that this is probably a smart move for Facebook. I was about to say I don't know if I'd really use this functionality, but I don't have it right now, so maybe I will. It seems like something that why wouldn't they just put that in there instead of us turning to some sort of a third-party solution for that problem? And they do have the problem that a lot of our news feeds feel really noisy, and people probably say things like, there's too much pressure, there's too much stuff, I don't even want to bother because I know I don't have time for this right now. Something with like a Save for Later feature might give them a little bit more time.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm not sure if I would use it on a regular basis, but like you, I definitely would want to try something like that out. I don't think it's really a big game changer or a feature that I think is all that exciting with Facebook, and maybe that's what we've been missing from Facebook, right? You know, I'm sure you're also subscribed to some of the press releases that come out from Facebook. I just got one from a PR agency in Toronto talking about Facebook Stories. Facebook just launched Facebook Stories, a place where they share stories of people on Facebook doing amazing things. But all of these things, I'm not sure that they're what we're looking for from Facebook, from such a massive company, a public company now that, you know, at one point we think that it did change many things in the world. And these are just still kind of small little steps. So I don't know. We're not going to stop talking about Facebook for a long time, I'm sure, Sarah.
Sometimes I think that the show could be the Facebook show, and we would not.
Yes.
We would never be running out of content. I know some of you would be very, very annoyed indeed. So we're not doing that. The point is that there's just a lot. There's a lot of Facebook news, and the thing is that Facebook is such a interesting indicator for what works and doesn't work on social, just because of the sheer number of people who use Facebook, whether they like it or don't like it, or just consider it a utility that they don't, you know, it's just part of their life. They don't really have an opinion about it one way or another. That's how you see your friends, that kind of thing. Speaking of mobile, Facebook. Some interesting numbers on usage of Facebook. Now, of course, for better or for worse, Facebook now is a company that's, you know, going to live or die by its revenue numbers. Maybe back in the day, Mark Zuckerberg just wanted it to be a social tool for people to connect with each other. But now there's a lot more at stake. And it is all of those things, but money's the important thing to Facebook at this point. So 102 million people accessed Facebook solely via mobile means in the month of June. So you go, okay, 102 million people were, you know, logging in on their phone or their tablet or that sort of thing. But consider that these people only accessed Facebook. I mean, they were never on a laptop, they weren't on a desktop, that sort of thing. This is all mobile. And this number is actually up 23% since March. So from March to June, 23% more folks said, yeah, I'm just accessing Facebook on the go, or I prefer my iPad app, or that sort of thing. You say, okay, well, you know, everyone's going to mobile. That seems pretty normal. But the problem is that Facebook, the advertising experience on mobile is slim to none. They've got sponsored stories that supposedly show up in my newsfeed every once in a while. I never really see any. I'm certainly not feeling like I am clicking on them. If I have, it's probably an accident, and it's happened maybe a couple of times. On the web version, you've got all sorts of ads over on the left-hand, or on the right-hand side, rather. You know, you can count like 6 or 7. So that's an issue with Facebook, and the CPM rates are higher for the mobile version. So it's not as if fewer ads just mean fewer money for Facebook. But right now, it does kind of mean that. And it seems like their user base, especially in emerging markets where you've got a lot of folks that are on the internet via mobile, and they are just bypassing the whole desktop experience. It's not like they're even internet cafes or anything like that. It's happening very quickly, particularly since Facebook's growth is slowing in places like the U.S. and growing rapidly in places like, say, Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I think I think it's one of those things with Facebook is that they really do have to further capture that mobile audience, especially with a report like this that so many people are using mobile only. And I find I'm going more and more to mobile with Facebook as well, but don't exactly love the experience. But they really need to be able to do more with that audience. And I'm not sure that audience is going to put up with a lot of ads on the mobile side of things, and they'll just not enjoy the experience at all. So I don't know. I guess we just wait and watch what happens with this one. I have a half brother who is really, really techie. Loves all of this stuff, and recently just completely shut down his Facebook account. And I always see things like that as a bit of a sign, but we'll see. I'll try to remain optimistic. A former colleague of mine, Amber, I know you know her, Megan Maroney, who also is a former host of TWiT, way back in the Tech TV days. I saw her recently, and we kind of ran into each other. She lives in Petaluma, and I'd be like worried that she wouldn't want me to tell the story, but
I'm not really worried that she's watching because she's just really busy. But I said, how am I not even seeing pictures of your kids on Facebook? And, I'm kind of thinking, and she says, I don't have a Facebook account. And my reaction was like, that's insane. Really? But it's like, I wouldn't say that to just anybody. I don't think that people are insane who don't have Facebook accounts, but Megan in particular, I mean, when I worked with her, we were all technology all the time. So to me, it was like my first reaction was, what? No, how could you do that? You don't know anything, right? You're just like blind to the world around you. And she goes, I just hang out with people in real life like we're doing right now. And so I went, touche. So
yeah, no, I mean, exactly when you hear stories like that. Sarah, I was actually thinking of you just to lighten up the subject a little bit. I saw something, and we may have talked about it on the show before. It's some tool that allows you to replace baby images on Facebook with cat images or images of bacon or food.
Unbaby.me.
Hilarious.
It was really funny. So if you don't know this, I had retweeted somebody who had sent it. I don't remember who it was that sent it originally, but it's unbaby.me. And Amber, you've had it. Well, I guess you don't have a baby anymore, but he was a baby once, so it's like I'm not anti-baby.
Yeah, but I have no photos of him on Facebook.
You
so,
don't?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't. No. Yeah, you're pretty private about that. Some people are not. So we all know it's not that we hate babies. It's just that sometimes you've got that friend who is just really overeager, and you've had enough. And the idea behind On Baby is it's a Chrome extension that will replace baby pictures with awesome pictures. Now, the default is pictures of like cats and puppies, but you can actually you can actually personalize it so that you could, let's say, make only pictures of beer based on a certain Instagram tag show up instead of baby pictures, depending on what you like. I actually installed this because I was like, let's just see how it works.
Oh, yeah.
So this guy that I know who does not have any babies, as far as I know, all of a sudden it says, like, baby removed, and it's a picture of, like, a cute puppy on one of his pictures. But he doesn't have a caption, so I'm going, well, what was it? So I went back, and I disabled the Chrome extension, and I reloaded the page, and it was a picture of him with his puppies, and he said something like, my babies. So not a perfect system.
Not a perfect tool.
Not a perfect
funny
tool.
nonetheless. I was thinking of you when I saw it, but just because I was thinking replacing them with cats might be kind of a fun thing. But yes, I don't know, Sarah. The Facebook stuff is, like you said, we could have a whole hour. We could have a whole conversation just on what's happening on Facebook. But that was one of the more humorous tools that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I had forgotten all. That was so 2 days ago. I had forgotten about the fun that is unbaby.me. We do have a lot more news. We've got spotlights. We've got viewer feedback. We've got Amber's Rat or Fat, all sorts of stuff. I quickly want to remind everyone, for any of the links that we mention, we talk about a story, you think it's interesting, you want to share it with somebody, or you want to go back to a certain service that we talked through. That's all fine. You don't have to worry about having your pencil at the ready when you're watching or listening. Our website is twit.tv/TSH. That's twit.tv/TSH, for the social hour. And that's where all of our past episodes live. That's where our subscription links are. If you want to just spend a few minutes watching episode 70, for example. It was a good episode last week. You can just watch that inline right on the page. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you to enjoy the show. So don't worry if you ever want to catch up with us. That's where you find us. And of course, you can write us at the social hour at twit.tv. And thanks to everybody who writes us each week. We wish we could feature you all, but we try to feature as many as possible, and we have a few of those coming up. Quickly, let's thank Squarespace for sponsoring this episode of the Social Hour. Squarespace has gotten really interesting in the last couple of weeks, and you might not be familiar with what they've rolled out. It's called the new Squarespace, and it's pretty much a whole new product. So if you haven't actually gotten interested in Squarespace yet, if you didn't really think that you had the time or the energy to build a really high quality website or blog from scratch, this is a great time to give it a try, because you won't even know the difference. You'll just say, wow, this is really amazing. But for anybody who's been using Squarespace already, it's pretty much just faster and easier than ever. Really nice templates, all new templates too. I mean, if you are looking for something new, this is the time to check out Squarespace because it's really going to impress you. You've got 100% drag and drop functionality for all sorts of customization tools. So if you want to code, if you want to be like a CSS expert, that's fine. Squarespace is perfectly a great place for you. But if you don't know what you're doing, Squarespace is almost even better because it makes it so easy to put together something that really, really looks professional without a whole lot of effort at all. Better social media integration. That's important to Amber and me. And obviously, if you're watching this show, it's important to you too. You can automatically import and sync and publish to and from social media with just a few clicks. So you can refresh your site content, even if you're not blogging regularly. Maybe you're just very, very active, as I am, all over the internet. Keeps your blog active too. And it helps you, people follow you because they know where you're hanging out online. Social media buttons also too. So Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, Foursquare, Dropbox, LinkedIn, Pinterest. I could go on. Squarespace they pretty much said, listen, we know what people are doing online. We know where they're busy. We know where they want to be. So let's make it easier than ever for them to integrate all of that into their Squarespace site, whether you're writing creative poetry or you've got a photography business or maybe you've got a podcast and you want to make sure that people, going to the customized website. Tom and Veronica do that on Sword and Laser. And it looks really nice, too. Squarespace is great. I was dragging my feet for a while because I've got this nice custom code at saralane.com. I've been using Squarespace for years. And I was kind of going like, I really like my custom design. I do. But, you want to change every couple of years, or I do anyway. And now that Squarespace has a whole new Squarespace 6 under the hood, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start over.
Fun.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those fun projects because I feel like I've really got a good excuse. Squarespace wants us to. So anyway, that's squarespace.com. If you're interested and you want to know more about it, just go to the website and try sign up for a free account. Okay, so you don't have to put in your credit card or anything like that. You just try it out. Try it out for a couple of weeks. Start building your website. And see if you like it. If you decide to purchase an account with Squarespace, use the offer code SocialHour8. That's SocialHour, the number 8. That's all one word. And it'll give you 10% off your first purchase on new accounts. That includes monthly and annual plans. They've got different pricing plans to fit your needs. And also, they offer free domain registration if you go ahead and purchase an annual plan subscription, which a lot of people do. You figure if you go through the trouble of putting together a site, you give it a year, right? You can get from free domain registration as well. Not always free, as you all know. So that's squarespace.com, and we thank them so much for sponsoring this episode of The Social Hour.
All right. So, Sarah, I know we have another story, but I really want to get to the second story because that's an awesome story. But I know we're going to do Bing first. So you got to stick around we have a couple of really interesting things in this part of the Social Hour. First up, Sarah, and I know you were just playing with this before the show, but Bing adds friend tagging to social sidebar. And this looks kind of interesting.
Yeah, we've talked about the Bing social sidebar, which is obviously called the social sidebar. So it works for us already, but they keep adding cool functionality. I think the last time we talked about it, we had said that it had added Foursquare tips and tips and reviews that people have left, when you're searching for certain things, which can be very helpful. Foursquare and Yelp actually have a lot of that in common. But so I'm on Bing right now. I've got social search open. This is the social search area over on the right-hand side, which you can, collapse or expand. I've got it expanded. And I just went ahead and searched for Gabby Douglas. She's the American who won the gold medal in individual gymnastics yesterday. So very exciting. There's lots of news about her. Here's what's new. If I want to go ahead and share my search. So it's not that I'm saying here's the search for Gabby Douglas that I'm sharing with you, Amber, because you could just search yourself. I could give it some context. Maybe, I could say, hey, Amber, where were you when you watched Gabby win? It could be a question or some sort of conversation that we had before, or hey, I'm reminding you about this. Here's a search that's somehow going to be helpful to you. And then I can go ahead and choose what friends I am notifying. So I can go ahead and type in Amber, And Bing will probably say, I don't know who that is because you haven't actually connected to Amber on Bing yet. But the idea is that you can search up to, or you can choose up to 5 Facebook friends to notify, basically to kind of blast out. And originally I was like, well, why does it stop at 5? I mean, why not 7? But I think that it is encouraging that almost path-like conversation where it's not actually about blasting out. You know, it's not about Twitter saying, hey, world, read this. I want to share this with you. It's like, I would specifically want to be talking to, you know, Amber and Leo and Alex about this because we're all friends and there's like a relationship there, like a social relationship.
Like, it's not as spammy almost, right?
Yes,
I mean, not that it would be considered spammy, but it's funny. I just did a mobile keynote about a month ago, and one section of my keynote was all about the trend of micro networks like Path and 23 Snaps, and there are others out there. But I think it's becoming more and more common of, like you said, of focusing on these smaller groups of people who are maybe more important in your life, and we see more apps kind of going in that direction as well. So maybe that's something we can focus on in the show down the road, just keeping an eye on some of those smaller networks and trends that are about, maybe quality, not so much quantity.
Yeah, I love those. I've really taken to some of the networks that almost discourage you from self-promotion. And I've probably mentioned this before, and it's like, because I feel like I spend so much time self-promoting, and I don't really feel good about it. You know, when we tweet out that we're doing the show, or hey, check this out, it's like, I mean, I hope that that's helpful, but there's always a little piece of me saying, like, I wonder if I'm bugging people, or it's all me kind of thing. So, and I know that it's not wrong to do that at all. That's just my problem. But I like sometimes feeling like the pressure's off. Like, this is not about getting page views or getting attention or whatever. It's just honestly about communicating, but it's not face-to-face.
Yeah. Well, there's even a couple social networks I've seen recently that are apps that are just for couples. I'm not saying that the two of us should have used one of these, Sarah, but...
Amber, you want to have a pair account with me.
I do, or like a couple's account, just for fun. I just had to hint it towards it, but there's a lot more of those, right? So you can keep up to date with what just one other important person in your life is doing, and whether it's a couple or, really good friends, whatever it might be. But it's been really fun to kind of watch what's happening with some of those different networks. So we'll definitely talk more about this. But now, Sarah, we need to talk about this link that you added to the rundown. And this is one of the stories I hadn't heard of. And I literally was glued to Gizmodo when I was reading this. And we won't have to read all of the entries because it's a long story. But I'm going to throw it over to you to talk about New York Times writer David Pogue and losing his iPhone and the happy ending.
Yes, this was... Talk about social media coming to the rescue. So David Pogue's a very well-known New York Times writer. He basically tweets out, my phone was stolen. Find my phone, shows that it's in Maryland. Can anybody help track it down? Hey, it's kind of an adventure. It almost seemed like he was throwing this out, half joking, but half like, wouldn't it be awesome if somebody actually lived somewhere near the area that my phone was? He thinks while he was on a train, it was swiped because he saw it. The phone ended up being somewhere, like it wasn't still on this train, so it wasn't like it fell under his seat or something. He says somebody took the phone, and then somebody, the phone was turned off, and then the phone was turned on because I was able to locate it with Find My Friends. He said that he sent out a text message, which you can do, so there's like a message that shows up like, here, call me, or, I guess it would be the phone. But he said, it seemed like it was being stolen, and Gizmodo... picked up this story. They have a very hilarious account of, David Pogue trying to track down his phone, which it kind of starts almost as if like they're sort of making fun of him a little bit, like, oh, he lost his phone. Let's help this poor man get his phone back. Here's an update. David has posted another photo where his phone is, and as you scroll down the page, here we see where the phone is supposed to be. Then they get a street view of, where the phone looks like it's in front of a school. Then the phone moves. Again, you see all these updates. I mean, we're up to like 18 updates. And then it's in this neighborhood. Someone who I guess knows this area says, this isn't a very safe neighborhood. You should be really careful if anyone's actually going to try to locate this phone. Just, you got to be careful, right? You don't want to just confront somebody, who might be a criminal type of thing. I don't know. And as you keep going, then Gizmodo says, all right, well, let's get some information, on home prices in this area. They say the Carmody Hills Peppermill Village area, which is where the phone was, has nearly twice as many murders as the national average, more than 3 times the average number of assaults. So be careful, everybody. At this point, you're kind of like, gosh, this is kind of a crazy story, right? And it turns out somebody from the local police department ends up picking up the story. Maybe he follows David Pogue on Twitter or somebody else who was talking about it. He goes ahead and I think he emailed Gizmodo, and they were trying to relay the message to David Pogue saying, I'm ready. I'm willing to help. I've got some time to do this. And anyway, the story gets crazier. We've got Google overhead views of the phone moved. Look, it was in the yard, and now it's inside the house. The phone is inside the house. Long story short, and it is a long story. And
it's a long one.
Gizmodo was kind enough to add some blinking HTML tags, which frankly we don't see enough of anymore, right?
No.
Showing the happy law enforcement officers who had gotten a hold of David Pogue's phone. It turns out it was in the backyard of this house or apartment building, just hanging out. So who knows what happened?
Bizarre.
Yes.
It's a great story, though. It's actually really fun to go over to Gizmodo, and we'll have the links on our show page on TWiT, just to go there and actually read the story step by step and see how quickly, like you said, it unfolds. So that was a really fun one to watch, although our next story is equally, I don't want to say as bizarre, but it was definitely a huge segue, I think. And this one is about Instagram and Iran's supreme leader joining Instagram. It turns out he's also on Twitter, but now has taken to Instagram, but not an active user or heavy user just yet.
Yeah, the Grand Ayatollah Khamenei, which many of you may know, is on Instagram. Hey, how about that? As Amber, as you mentioned, it's not as if he's not familiar with the internet, already has a Twitter account, but hey, first Instagram photo is okay. Well, it looks like it's some sort of a gathering, religious gathering, is what the Atlantic was guessing. Although the Atlantic points out, number 2 kind of looks like they're using a filter, right? We've got a little bit of we've got a little bit of what looks like. Gosh, I don't want to venture a guess of what filter it might be, but it looks like there's actually some Instagram filters being used here for anybody who says they make photos just look worse. I don't know. I think this is a pretty nice photo. But the Atlantic says, interesting of note, that's Iranian President Ahmed, I always get this name wrong, Ahmadinejad on the right, just over his shoulder. And supposedly, the two have been kind of at war, bitterly feuding for over a year. So, well, does this mean anything? Is this supposed to be a message to anybody? We don't know. But it is kind of fascinating, especially since this is, the sort of thing that a peek into something that many people don't have access to and are particularly fascinated with. And I don't know, people on Instagram, hey, who's next?
It's popular
Kim
when.
Jong-un, I think.
Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. So if Instagram isn't your tool, you have kids at home and you want to try something different, like a mail app, perhaps for really young kids, you can try a new iPad app called Maily. Now, this is targeted towards kids between the ages of 4 and 9. And the idea behind the app is pretty simple. It allows kids to go online within the app and to write an email to people in their family, like grandparents, for example. You're not actually writing the email. It's very visual. So you would add pictures, maybe even a picture of yourself. They have a really nice little demo on their website that shows the type of things you can do. And you can add stamps and all this other stuff. So it's a really fun way for, I think, young kids to understand the power, perhaps, of email and being able to do more with on their iPads than just kind of play with them. They can actually interact in a safe way. I think that's kind of the mission of the company, Maily, is they talk about how kids this young can't get Gmail accounts. They're not going to be using Facebook and going into these large social networks, but they still want to connect. And so this is a fun way for them to kind of draw pictures within the app, and then easily, just by pressing a photo, for example, of someone within the contact list, someone they know, they click on the photo, and then that message is sent to that person. I love this. I think it's super cute. I think my little guy would probably use something like this, and I think it's fun.
Yeah, I think you're probably a better judge of, if this feels right, because you are a parent, and you've got a young kid who is, if he's not already wanting to email or asking about it, it's like it's a concept that young kids are going to know about and be curious about.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, if they've got a fun tool like this, then already they're participating, and that makes kids happy. And it looks like it looks like the design is really nice. It seems to make a lot of sense. You don't have to know how to spell the word grandma, but you can click on her picture.
Yeah.
You know what she looks like. I love this.
Super simple. It's just fun. I mean, I know my son, who's 3.5, he asks all the time about email. He never says call anyone anymore. He says email them. So that's sort of the language that he's used to growing up with. So I can imagine in a year that maybe even less time, he'd be ready to use something like this. So I think it's kind of fun. And that is our spotlight for this week. And let us know what you think of that. And now we're going to go into our viewer and listener feedback, because we have quite a bit this week, Sarah.
Yeah, we do. Some are kind of follow-ups to stuff that we've talked about in past episodes. Last week, Melissa writes in and says, Jonathan was looking for a Goodreads equivalent for movies. He had found something, but he wondered if we had any other ideas. Melissa says, I really like Flickster. That's by Rotten Tomatoes. I believe Flickster was once its own thing, and Rotten Tomatoes bought them, if I have that correct. She says it has all the information you need to decide whether you want to watch a movie, and it lets you keep track of what you want to watch, like a wish list, and when you've watched something. So it's all kind of an integration with social networks, so you can show off what you've seen, what you want to see, and then know what your friends have seen and want to see. She says, I love having all the trailers, the movie times, and even theater ticket purchases and iTunes rental right there in the app. I agree with you, Melissa. I'm actually surprised that I didn't come up with Flickster last week when we were talking about this sort of stuff. It's great. I particularly like the iPad app. I use it all the time because I like Rotten Tomatoes and I like reading, reviews from critics about upcoming movies and things like that. But Flickster has a little bit of everything for everyone. Amber, I don't know, do you use Flickster?
No, I don't, actually. I've never used it, but it seems like I need to give it a try. So it's good that there are people out there, Sarah, who are helping us fill out the content of the show on a nonstop basis. Absolutely.
We also got another email from Glenn. This is in reference to that, I don't even remember the name of it now. Unfollowing.net? Unfollowing.net?
Something like that, yeah.
And that was my, I was all excited to say, if you're following 2,500 people and you want to unfollow them all, with just a click, you can do that. And it turns out by the time we talked about it on the show, Twitter or someone else had shut the site down. Glenn says, I, too, encountered a problem where I was following too many people on my Twitter. They were flooding my feed with junk. Some of these people were my friends, though. I didn't want to hurt their feelings by unfollowing them. How Canadian of me, he says. Rather than unfollow them, I began using Hootsuite, and I created lists that show up on the front page of my Hootsuite app on my iPhone or iPad. This saves me from clicking into several layers of the regular Twitter app to see the lists I've created. With this solution, I only see the tweets that I want to read, and I haven't hurt anybody's feelings of my well-meaning but yucky friends. That's a good setup. I often sort of forget about how helpful lists can be for anybody who's not using Twitter lists. You follow whoever you want, but then you have specific lists, so if you wanted to follow, just people that you associated with social, you might follow Amber and me and some of your other, kind of social friends, and you name the list something, and then whenever you just want to see what we're talking about, then your Twitter view is by that list. But having Hootsuite actually load up a particular list as your main view is pretty nice. Amber, I know that you use Hootsuite. Is this something that you've ever done or are doing?
No, but I feel like I need to do it. I feel like I miss a lot of what's going on because I don't really use lists all that well. And I've gotten to the point where I'm following too many people to really keep track. I mean, I try as much as I can, but the reality is I'm following thousands of people and I just miss a ton of stuff. So I need to actually sit down and start using lists. And I do use Hootsuite, and it's been a tool I've used for a while. So that is an awesome tip. we should say we also had another piece of feedback, this time on Google+. We haven't talked a lot about Google Plus on the show in the past couple of weeks. I've been trying to use it more and trying to build it into my routine, and sometimes I fail miserably. Some weeks I do okay. But we got this feedback from Bernie J, who says that I've listened to this podcast since it started, and it made my 1-hour drive to Waterloo more bearable and more enjoyable. Today I was able to watch the show live and participate in the IRC room, the chat room, for the first time. It was a ton of fun to see how the show works behind the scenes and the interactions of the crowd. Thanks for such a great job, a fellow GTAer. Again, that's from Bernie J on Google Plus, and a fellow GTAer. That's the Greater Toronto area where I live. But very cool, seeing someone going into the chat room for the first time and being part of that conversation. And it's a fun and friendly place. So, of course, inviting anyone else who wants to watch live to jump into the chat room. So, thanks for sharing that, Bernie.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. It's this is why we do this stuff live. It's it's a little rough around the edges sometimes, but it is fun, or we want it to be as fun as possible. We've got the chat room that Alex showed momentarily a minute ago. I mean, this is actually, it's a very interactive thing. When Amber or me, or this happens all the time on some of the other shows where we say, there's this, what is that service? Oh, chat room, you'll know. We'll come back to it. And sure enough, we always kind of get our answer, and that just makes everybody smarter and feel like we're having a conversation. So I love the live element, and I'm so glad that Bernie is enjoying it as well. Amber, you've got something in here called the Twitter Spoof of the Week. I don't even know where that's going to go.
I know. It is funny because I figured since we have some feedback from a couple of different Canadians that this would actually fit nicely within our show rundown. This is a spoof account that I found on Daily Dot. It's called Stats Canada, and it's basically a spoof account for Canadians. I'm not sure if people outside of Canada would really understand some of the inside jokes, so I thought I would share it because I know we do have some diehard and dedicated Canadian listeners. So a lot of funny things, some of them not appropriate to show necessarily, but this one, in Canada, 40% of every paycheck goes directly to Nickelback. That's kind of a fun one. Sarah, are you familiar with the band Nickelback?
How could I not be? But I will be honest that I had no idea they were Canadian.
Well, the thing is, they are not really well liked in some parts of Canada, and that might be a bit of an understatement. People like to make fun of them, and it's unfortunate, but I think that happens everywhere. And also because we pay really high taxes, this is just kind of a funny joke for Canadians. So I don't think everybody listening to the show is going to get all of these jokes. However, it's a fun one for Canadians to check into. It's stats_Canada, making fun of some of the stats in Canada, because we do have to fill out these really long forms to report mundane information about our lives in Canada, and this is kind of making fun of that, but there's some good stuff on there
in a lighthearted way. And I mean, if you're saying, hey, some of this is a little bit insider but funny because if you live in Canada, you know that it's true, then those are always the best kinds of
they're the best,
winky wink sort of thing. I'm going to follow Stats Canada because even though I didn't know that Nickelback was a Canadian band, I would like to know more about Canada in general because it is a very large, mysterious country.
Oh, very mysterious. Very mysterious.
I mean, it's I feel like Amber is just more mysterious every week.
Yes.
Like all Canadians.
A lot of mystery, a lot of darkness around what's going on up here. Nonetheless, some funny stuff on that Twitter account, and I think people would, if they're Canadian, they'll get a kick out of it. There's some good stuff there, particularly if you're a hockey fan. There are a lot of hockey jokes. Let me say, every fourth or fifth tweet is all about hockey. So I thought I'd share that with some of our Canadian feedback this week.
Awesome. A few people in chat are like, "What do you mean mysterious? Canada is only mysterious to Americans." It was just a joke. Boy, I know how to rile you people up. But you say anything about Canada and Canadians go, "Oh, you Americans, you just so, everything's about you."
Sarah loves Canada.
No, I do love Canada. I want to go to Toronto. I don't know Amber's homeland very well. I've only been to the West Coast. I know.
You would have a very warm invitation. I know you have a lot of fans here, so they would love it.
I know. One of these days I'll get up there and we'll paint the town red.
We'll meet in person.
Yes, we'll do that too.
No rush, though.
We'll do that too. We'll just meet and then we'll party.
Yeah.
And then that'll be it. Reminder that we do love hearing from you. try to put as much of your feedback and your tips and ideas into every show. The Social Hour at twit.tv is how you can email us. If you're feeling brave and you want us to hear your voice, I promise it's easy. We don't bite, or at least our Google Voice mailbox doesn't bite. You can call us at 2626-SOCIAL. That's 2626-SOCIAL. Or you could always record a video, upload it somewhere, and send us the link. We got a funny video on iPad yesterday, which was a gentleman over in D.C. who was telling us that he liked an app that we had talked about, but he framed the video really nicely so we could see him like down by the water with geese behind him. You know, Leo and I were like, oh, it's so nice. It looks really nice over there. Yeah, so, you know, if you have geese, or even if not, you can always send us a video. But now, without further ado, we'll move into Amber's Rad or Fad.
All right. So I had another Rad or Fad in here, and then I was reading it today, and I don't know when I found it, but it was super lame. I can't believe I included it. So there's a lot of pressure for Rad or Fad to come up with something either really cool or something that is definitely a fad. This week, I just stumbled across this article about Logitech coming out with a new HD Skype camera for TV. So the idea being, if you often have Skype video chats with friends and family, you get frustrated about the whole computer experience, you can then have a much better experience by using this new gadget that was released from Skype that allows you to use it's all Skype certified as far as the camera itself, and it comes bundled with a remote control, which I think was kind of cool. You know, imagine sitting back on your couch and actually doing a Skype chat where people can be relaxed and the video is nice and big and looks great. So I think this is pretty rad. I mean, the price is a little bit high maybe right now. Hopefully it may come down. I think it's about $200 if I'm right. And it has a built-in ringer, a really good lens, and 4 different microphones. But great for families who are increasingly living further and further away from each other and rely on Skype to have just a more pleasant experience than walking around with like a laptop in your hands and trying to move it around. And that just never works, as we know.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, it's a lot of money to plunk down. So it's something that you would definitely want to be using. But I welcome the day where, for example, on this show, I mean, your shot looks fine, but it's like that's because we're used to what Skype shots look like. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of, you know, stuff to play with here. It's like you've got your Skype camera, you try to light it as good as possible, and for the most part, you've got a nicer camera that you can use. But for the most part, everything kind of looks the same on Skype. And I welcome the day where we just have nice shots of all sorts of stuff because we have more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think this is rad. I mean, it's moving in the right direction, and I don't know. I hopefully, maybe at some point, I'll get a chance to try it out. But I could see definitely using something like this. Like I said, especially if you have kids and they're trying to talk to their grandparents, it's too hard to crowd around one camera. Those calls, you know, they might be fun, but they're really not that enjoyable from a technical experience. So anything that makes it easier, I think, is awesome.
I do too. Yeah, I every once in a while I have to Skype into some of the shows here, and from home it's like I don't really have a very good setup at home, so you know I try to make it look as good as possible. But it'd be really neat, you know, if I had something where I could kind of sit in my living room setup and feel, you know, as comfortable as I would be if I was watching TV and have that camera there that looks really good, and it's kind of a win-win for everybody. In fact, maybe it's something that we can try out on our show before you buy, and we can give you a sense of if it really does have awesome quality. But
I'll try to track Renan.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Amber. This seems pretty rad to me, or at least a rad trajectory.
Yeah, we just need a fad for next week. Like I said last week, if anyone wants to send in an idea for a rad or fad, a video, or wants to phone us or an email, whatever it might be, happy to include that in the show if it's a good one. So don't be shy.
No.
Give it a try.
Yeah, be social. Come on. We are. It's easy.
Exactly.
On that note, Amber, we've come to the end of our hour. That is it for this episode of The Social Hour. This was episode 71, by the way.
Wow.
Hey, look at us. We're in the seas. Remember, we're live on Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific. Do join us live if you can, but don't worry if you can't because we're on demand. You can watch anytime over the weekend. The show obviously comes out on Friday afternoons or whenever you get to it. We're not picky about that. Our website is twit.tv/TSH. Of course, you can find our show in iTunes. We have large and small video feeds, depending on how you want to bring in the content. Audio feeds as well. If you don't want to miss a show, but know you can't watch it, you can always subscribe to our audio feed as well. But until next week, I'm Sarah Lane.
And I'm Amber MacArthur. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all soon.